and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is a book that I had meant to read as soon as it came out, I think it was last year sometime, and didn't get around to it because I'm terrible, and then I happened to find it in the library last couple of weeks ago and I read it. And it was really, really good, so I'm going to get into my spoiler-free review. As I said, no spoilers. I might do some spoilers just towards the end, just if I've got anything extra to say, but usually I can cover everything I want to say without giving any spoilers, so without any further ado, let's get into it. So, Gods of Jade and Shadow is set in 1920s Mexico, and we follow our main character, Cassiopeia, who spends her life doing chores for her grandfather in this sort of small town. She's almost like Cinderella-esque character. She has to do all the chores because she's the youngest, and she gets really looked down upon by her grandfather and her slightly older cousin as well, Martine. And she always, she dreams of getting away from her family, from this tiny little village where everyone sort of looks down on her and stuff, and she just has huge dreams of getting away and getting to the glamorous city and things, and dancing and having nice dresses and things, and she just wants to get away. And one day when her family are all out and she's cleaning, she opens a box and accidentally releases one of the gods of death from Mayan mythology, Hunkame, and he sort of comes back to life after being stuck in this box, but he's missing parts of himself, and he's now sort of tied to Cassiopeia. So he takes her with him as he sort of goes across Mexico and Central America and to all these different cities to retrieve the lost parts of himself so that he can be back to his full strength. And I really, really enjoyed this book. It was a bit weird though, because it's not that it's slow, because everything kind of really gets going quite quickly. But the whole book has this sort of sense of there's no urgency. It feels really gentle, despite the fact that there's a time limit on how Hunkame can get all the pieces of himself back. There's a time limit with that, and but you never get this sense of oh, we need to do this, and any sense of urgency. And even as he sort of goes about getting the bits of himself back, you're never really of the opinion oh, he's not going to convince this person to give up their the piece of him that they're holding on to. It's it's a really weird sort of vibe. It's just like I said, there's just no sense of urgency, but the story doesn't suffer because of that. I feel like it's actually all right sort of tone, because you're following Cassiopeia and Hunkame as they get to know each other, and Cassiopeia really comes into her own. She's such an interesting main character because she's so defiant and stands up for herself, has these huge dreams, and takes no shit from Hunkame, even though he's a god of death, and he's technically you should be on your knees worshipping me, and she was fucking make me. She and a lot of the time when she was at home, she was always really defiant to her mother and to her cousin and stuff, which always pissed him off. And it's a huge part of her character is the fact that she just practically can't help herself, and she always just doesn't take people's shit. So I really, really liked her as a main character, and sort of seeing her become more confident and become more knowledgeable and just kind of comfortable in this world of gods and demons and stuff that she suddenly finds herself in. Because this is all Mayan mythology and stuff, which is something I know absolutely nothing about, so it was really interesting to learn about the two gods of death. You've got Hunkame and his brother Mikrokosmos, and the sort of feud that they have going on, and it's just really, really interesting. And the whole idea about Zilbalba, which is the realm of dead and things, and I don't know, it's really hard to describe this book, because they go from city to city finding Hunkame's different parts. They really get to start to know each other and become quite good friends, and romance starts there. And they're just both really interesting characters, because as it goes along, Cassiopeia becomes more confident, she becomes more sure of herself, and then Hunkame actually becomes more human as it goes along. And I think seeing him go from being this almighty being to just being a regular guy is a really, really interesting journey for him to go through. And then his and Cassiopeia's relationship as well. I kind of saw it coming, because I was oh yeah, they're gonna have a romance and stuff. But I actually really, really enjoyed it because of the way it developed, and the fact that actually it was quite important then to the climax of the story in actually having, you know, like I said, there was a lot of it that I felt like, oh, you couldn't tell which way it was going to go, and then there comes a point in the story where they can make one decision or another, and their relationship and this sort of love they have for each other is actually a crucial part in whether they choose one or the other. And I find that actually really interesting, because I was like, you know, I actually don't know which way this is going to go. I don't know what they're going to go with. You know, it was really, really interesting, and I felt that so therefore, you know, I found that the relationship was actually really, really important to the rest of the story and to them as characters, and I really, really liked actually seeing that in a fantasy as opposed to just having a romance for the sake of it. It was actually really crucial to the actual story without this being a romance book. Another really interesting character that you meet is her cousin Martine, because after she sort of goes on with Hinkame, he gets sent after her, and I don't know, he's just sort of, he's this selfish, immature, sort of spoiled brat kind of character, and whilst he sort of doesn't really change throughout the book, he does kind of come to terms with his, you know, view of his cousin and why he perhaps doesn't like her as much as he does, and then also just his own sort of place in the family and what his grandfather sort of treats him and what his grandfather thinks of him and what he thinks of himself. And yeah, he's not like a favourite character, I still don't like him, but he was definitely a sort of character that became far more interesting as the book went along. And yeah, I just found that all the characters in this to be really, really interesting. I loved the descriptions and the visuals and the, you know, descriptions of the costumes and the hairstyles and the different cities, and how Cassiopeia, having come from, you know, a tiny village, having lived in a sort of bigger city when she was younger, but having lived in a smaller village for more of her life, and how she feels in all these different places, as well as then sort of how, you know, some of these cities have like huge French influence in their culture, whereas another city then has huge American influence in the culture, and how she sort of sees that and comments on that, and how it sort of just comes into and leans it and contributes to the vibe of the city that they're in and what's going on. I just find that to be so interesting, and as I said, I really, really loved the Mayan mythology in this. It really makes me want to look into more Mayan mythology because I know absolutely nothing about it, and I just loved the descriptions and the characters. But yeah, I think I gave this a 3.5 or 4 stars in total. Yeah, it's a really, really great book. I really, really enjoyed it, and I kind of wasn't expecting to almost. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. Great characters, great setting, and whilst the plot's not the most exciting, it is still really, really good, and I absolutely loved this book. So yeah, I can highly recommend it. But thank you so much for watching. Have you read Gods of Jade and Shadow? What do you think? Did you enjoy it? Did you not really enjoy it? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And have you read any other books that have got Mayan mythology in them? Because, as I said, I'd like to sort of read a bit more about it, so if you can give me any recommendations, I'd love to hear from you. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.